Hey everyone, what's happening? Well, we're on to a new unit. I'm pretty stoked because biomes are awesome. So, biomes are the largest divisions of the biosphere. And you may ask, well, what's the biosphere? This is the thin layer of land and air and water where living things exist. And we're going to be coming back to this word all the time, or this root word, and bio. And if we think about bio, it means life. So I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about this. So all of these things, the air, the land, the water, these are all things that help or affect living things. And now biomes are made up of biotic, there's that word again, living, and abiotic factors. And so these are non-living. Now, examples of biotic factors would be things like plants, animals, anything that's living. And examples of abiotic factors or components would be things like sunlight and moisture. The cool thing about these is that the abiotic factors affect the biotic factors. So the strength of the biotic factors, or the animals and plants, is directly correlated to the abiotic factors. So if it's really nice and warm and moist, then things are going to grow. If it's not, things are not going to flourish. So a biome is a large area that contains similar biotic and abiotic components. So if we think about tropical rainforests, they have high rainfall, warm temperatures, and a variety of birds and insects, but not too many large mammals. Now, if we take a look at these 8 major biomes, you've got boreal forest, desert, grassland, permanent ice, temperate deciduous forest, temperate rainforest, tropical rainforest, and tundra. And I've got a picture up here that I want to show you guys. And you can kind of see, well, we can see the different biomes, and we can see that there's some right over. Here's our desert. We've got some woodland, we've got some boreal forest here. Another word for that is taiga. And we've got some tundra, and then we've got polar ice caps at the top and the bottom. Now, the really cool part is these biomes can exist all over the place. There's something really interesting about them, though. If you look at over here at Russia, not only is there boreal forest there, but it's also in Canada. It has something to do with something else. It has something to do with the abiotic factors. So we can classify these different biomes based on temperature, moisture, type of plants, and what kind of interactions they have together. So 2 of the most important factors affecting biomes are temperature and precipitation. And precipitation is just moisture. So it's rain, snow, mist, or fog. Another factor is latitude. Let's go back to this picture for a second. What do you notice about the latitude of Canada and Russia? Very similar. Also, the desert in Mexico and the desert in Africa. Very similar. Interesting. So latitude is the distance measured in degrees north or south. And I want to draw a little picture for you guys right here. And we've got north, south, put another color on here, and we've got our equator, and they kind of go like this, and they kind of angle down. Now, these are latitude, and I like to think about latitude equals latitude. And what that does is it helps me remember that lines of latitude are flat, and lines of longitude are up and down. Altitude, or elevation, is the height of a landmass above sea level. It also has an effect on temperature and precipitation. Next, wind is another abiotic factor, and it influences the weather and therefore the biomes. So we're going to move on to climographs. And climographs, basically, they talk about climate. And climate is the average pattern of weather conditions in a certain region. Now, I mean average because it's taken over several years, sometimes even 20 years, the average temperature, the average amount of rainfall. So a climograph is a graph of climate data over a period of years from local weather observations. So let's take a look at Tofino. All right, so what do we know about Tofino? We can see that we have our months, we have our time right here on the x-axis, and we have our precipitation, and our precipitation is always in the bar graph. All right, so let's just put some blue on here so you guys pretend that that's water. And what do we know about the precip in Tofino? Well, we know that in the summer, you can see right here, the precipitation is very low. But you know in the winter, it's very high right here. So what can you tell me about that? Well, the temperature decreases in the winter and the temperature increases in the summer. So we know that it's hotter. So this line right here, I'm going to put it in black. This line is the temperature, and it has to do with these numbers right there. So let's answer a few questions. A climograph shows the average temperature and precipitation in an area for each month over the period of a year. Yeah, so the bar graph is the precipitation, and the line graph part is the temperature. So Tofino is in the temperate rainforest biome. So the amount of precipitation is very high. And if you've ever been to Tofino or if you've ever been down on the coast, you notice that there's green plants everywhere, lots of ferns, lots of trees. Because there's so much water, they can grow very, very well. So Tofino sees the most amount of rain in what months? Well, if we look, we've got November and December. And Tofino has the highest temperature in what month? Well, we look right here. That's the highest temperature, and it's about 15 degrees. So that's right in August, and it's approximately 15 degrees on average for the month of August. Now, we can often tell what biome a climograph represents by looking at the average temperature and precipitation. And if you haven't guessed yet, these are the most important abiotic factors. All right, let's turn down the page and we'll take a look at the next climograph. So let's see if we can see what type of biome this actually is. So we know, what can we gather from this? Well, very little rain. And guess what? It's fairly hot all the time. It doesn't really get below zero, but in the summer months, kind of right around here, it's fairly hot. So we know that it's hot. There's not very much rain. Well, this is a desert. So not very much rain and fairly warm temperatures all year round. Next, we're going to talk about adaptations and biomes. Well, an adaptation is a characteristic that allow an animal or plant to survive better in its environment. Now, this is really interesting because the way an animal adapts is based on its environment. So if the environment changes, the most adaptable animals will survive. And there's three different types of adaptations they can make. They can make structural, physiological, and behavioral. So structural adaptations is a feature of the organism's body that allows it to survive. So porcupines have quills, giraffes have long necks. Next, we have physiological adaptations, and it's a process within an organism's body. Now, this is within an organism's body that allows it to survive. So cacti have a different form of photosynthesis than ferns and leafy trees, which allows them to use less water. There's also several different physiological processes and adaptations that we're going to be looking into in class. Next, our third type of adaptation is behavioral. And humans do this too. So a behavioral adaptation is something an organism does that allows it to survive. All right. So bears hibernate to conserve energy in the winter when food is scarce. Other animals will, store food for the winter, like squirrels. So it's really important to remember that features of a biome determine the adaptations. So the environment affects the adaptations of plants and animals that live there, as well as us, people. All right, have a good rest of the day.